Hello, and welcome to the Once Again podcast. We are your hosts, Ashley and Jason. In today's episode, we'll be discussing the 2022 Disney Plus series, Obi-Wan Kenobi. At the time of this recording, the first 3 episodes of the series have aired. Although by the time I get this episode edited and released, the 4th episode will already be out too, so maybe some things that we talk about in this episode won't apply anymore. But Ashley and I will be engaging in a full spoilers discussion, so if you don't want to know anything about the series, pause this episode of our podcast and come back when you've watched them. The premise for the series is 10 years after the events of Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, in which the Jedi were destroyed by Order 66, and his former apprentice Anakin Skywalker fell to the dark side and became the Sith Lord Darth Vader. Obi-Wan Kenobi is on Tatooine, watching over Anakin's son, Luke. Hiding on Tatooine, Kenobi lives a solitary life in exile. Vader has set up the Sith Inquisitors program, a group of dark side Force users to hunt down any Jedi who survived Order 66. Kenobi is forced out of hiding when he is called on a mission to rescue Anakin's daughter, Leia, after she is kidnapped by the Inquisitors in a plot to draw Kenobi out. He then embarks on a rollicking adventure. I don't know what that means. It was
rollicking adventure.
Oh, excuse me. Rollicking. Someday I'll learn to read. But he then embarks on a rollicking adventure, eventually leading to a confrontation between him and Vader. And we're not going to go episode by episode, but I do want to say all the episodes are directed by Deborah Chow, and all the episodes are written in some way by Joby Harold, Stuart Beatty, Hosen Amini, and there's one other person in the 3rd episode, Hannah Friedman. So I'm just going to give credit to those people for right now. And then we're just going to kind of do this episode like we did on Loki. We're going to talk about the first 3 episodes, and then after the series is over, we'll come back and talk about the last 3 episodes. But, Ashley, what do you think so far?
We've talked about this outside of the podcast, but
yeah.
it's underwhelming, and I don't know what I expected, but I definitely didn't expect it to be Obi-Wan, chasing and trying to save Leia, and I think that hits upon my point that I bring up all the time when we talk about Star Wars, that it's here we are, still just dealing with the Skywalker family, surely we could have had Obi-Wan doing anything else. I get the idea was to get him off Tatooine, but, surely we could have found something else to get him off Tatooine that wasn't Leia-related.
Yeah. Even maybe,
Yoda getting him off, something.
Well, I was just about to say, the Inquisitor, put out a rumor that the Inquisitors found Yoda, and Obi-Wan being I have to rescue Yoda. Or something, and it could have been a lie. The Inquisitors didn't actually find Yoda. Or any
other, named important
Mace Windu is alive.
Yeah, you could have really done anything, and it would have been interesting.
Yeah, underwhelming is the word I would use to describe it exactly. I also, there's things I like about it, don't get me wrong, because a lot of people talk about it online.
don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I don't like it, but it's definitely been kind of here we are again.
Yeah, I think the second half is probably going to save it. I think we're in for some surprises. We do know, you said to me off recording, we know that there's no real tension because Obi-Wan's not going to kill Vader, and Vader's not going to kill Obi-Wan because they have to show up in episode 4.
Which is why I think when we see them fighting, I'm no, I suspected the series was mostly going to be that Obi-Wan surviving. Instead, we have him running around trying to save Leia, and it's no, I'd rather him be trying to save himself, to be honest. Yeah. What does hardened Obi-Wan do when he's backed into a corner? We're not getting that. We're getting Obi-Wan, the savior, trying to save the Skywalker family yet again.
Yeah, they could have done a lot of different things they could have done. I know, I was a big fan of this with Rebels, and I know other people were, but they could have done a Darth Maul storyline, Darth Maul finds him, or Obi-Wan has to find Darth Maul, something like that. I know they did that in Rebels, but there's things in the show that contradict what happens in Rebels already, in the 2nd episode, I think. But they could have done a million different things. Aside from the underwhelming feeling, my biggest criticism is that Ewan McGregor doesn't look old enough in this. They should have aged him up more. They should have given him a gray wig and gray beard. Because in 9 years, he's supposed to be Alec Guinness. And the only way that, people have talked about that from when the prequels came out, that he didn't look old enough yet for the 19 years for him to be Alec Guinness. I always rationalized, well, he spent those 19 years on Tatooine. That's a planet with 2 suns. His skin was going to get dried out and everything. It would age him much quicker.
You know what I'd like to see maybe at the end of the series is, like, maybe, we saw at the end of episode 3 that, like, movie episode 3 that we saw, the Emperor kind of get hit by a lot of
Force lightning
and, like, dark, Sith powers. And that aged him and kind of affected him. Maybe we can get something similar with Obi-Wan where he's kind of scarred and affected by something that...
Physically.
By Vader.
Yeah.
Like, I think that would be a good...
Because right now we're dealing with his emotional damage mostly. And not
the physical damage.
Yeah.
I mean, he gets dragged in the fire in the end of that last 3rd episode, but, like, that's still not enough physical damage to, like, age him that much.
On a planet where they have healing pods and everything like that, or in a universe, I should say, where they have healing pods.
It's gonna be something magical. That's gonna...
I agree. Maybe he has to go through Force lightning at some point or something, whatever it is. Maybe the Emperor will show up. I know Ian McDiarmid said he's not in it, but... he's probably going to be... I have a small feeling he's going to show up.
I think he's going to be one of those things that, like, last episode, like, pops in, and you're like, oh, the Emperor!
Yeah, like, here he is again to screw up everyone's day. But, yeah, because I can even imagine him, like, how
he could show up in a... Because we talked off screen about the fact that, like, a flashback would probably happen, which is why they got Hayden Christensen to begin with.
Yeah. Well, even how the Grand Inquisitor is mad at Third Sister / Reva, I can't remember how her name is said, but he's mad at her for being obsessed with Obi-Wan. The Emperor could be mad at Vader for the same thing. Be like, why are you wasting so much time hunting down Kenobi? Like, he's an old man now. You can beat him anytime you like. I bet you if the two of you fought, he would totally just let you slice him in half. Like, he would look off to the side at some young boy for a second, and then he would let you slice him in half. That would totally be what happens. In fact, I've foreseen it.
Oh my god. You're right, though.
No, like, they could do something like that, but yeah, I don't know. I think there's been some highlights. I think we should talk about the highlights. It is great, one, to see Ewan McGregor back as Obi-Wan.
Oh, definitely.
And, we've been dying to see him be this character again since the prequels ended, and he obviously enjoys it. In the little bits that we've gotten Hayden Christensen in, he's been great too. I think they understand. I've seen him in other stuff, and he's been very good. But I think they understand, hey, physical acting is Hayden Christensen's skill. Let's do him, like, don't give him any lines. Let's just... Oh, but speaking of lines and Vader, James Earl Jones sounds fantastic in this.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what they did to his voice to make him sound... Because he's, like, 97 years old.
He sounds so young.
Yeah, and in Rogue One, he didn't sound like Vader anymore. Like, his line delivery, his voice was not the same as it was in the prequels and the original series. Like,
oh, they definitely did Smada too in here.
But it sounds great. He sounds like Vader again. I think we said spoilers for the series, but Vader shows up. Although I think you can anticipate that.
I feel like if you know what time period we're talking about, like that was bound to happen.
Yeah. It's been, I said to you off our recording, I kind of like having Leia in it because one of my criticisms of the sequel series was, why did Leia and Han name their son Ben? Like, there's no reason for that. Like, if Luke had a son and named him Ben, that would make sense. But Leia and Han naming their son, like, Ben Kenobi's a guy that Han knew for about 30 minutes and Leia never even met. But now it's like, oh no, she did spend some time with Obi-Wan. He rescued her at least once, if not more times.
I do think the child actress that plays her does a great job too of like portraying little Leia, as it were. Like,
the sassy little
princess.
princess.
Yeah, she's great. Yeah. I love her.
Yeah, she's been getting a lot of hate online, which I'm like, do you people not remember Jake Lloyd and what you did to him?
Oh, it's so awful.
But she's also good.
Star Wars fan, do better.
Yeah.
Just treat the little actresses and actors better.
Treat all the actors better. Like, there's, if you have a problem with a character, what you have is a problem with how that character was written, not how the actor who I've criticized Hayden Christensen's performance, but I don't have a problem with him. Like, I have a problem with the terrible dialogue he was given to
which isn't
say.
his fault. He didn't write that. But
yeah.
No, little Leia definitely does a good job.
Yeah. Also, we see Tamara Morrison for one little brief scene as a former clone trooper that's now begging on a planet for credits, like galactic credits, presumably.
And it's got to be in everything
yeah,
now.
Well, he's got the greatest job security in the galaxy now. Anytime they need a clone to show up, there's things I like about it. There's things I don't like. Should we go through like the plot things that we remember? Like, we start off. I'll just say we start off pretty much. Obi-Wan's on Tatooine. He's doing.
Which is expected. I mean, if we started anywhere else... I mean, we started off with Order 66 and kind of...
Oh, you're right, yeah.
Dealing with that. And we see these little kids kind of escape, which I'm sure they'll all come back at some point to be important to the plot point line, because why show them?
Either they are the Inquisitors, or some of them are Inquisitors, or something.
Or they're gonna come in at the end and be like, look, here's all these, like... Jedi that are still alive.
Yeah, they rescue Obi-Wan, maybe. Something happens.
Yeah. Whatever happens there, definitely.
Yeah. But Obi-Wan's on Tatooine. He's working a job as, like, a meat harvester, I guess.
Something
on
like that.
those giant snakes. I don't really... something along those lines. The thing that I thought that they were going to do was he was going to get in trouble for stealing that one slice of meat.
Oh my god, I thought so too, and it didn't happen. I was like...
No, like, he's very clearly stealing this one extra slice of meat for his weird camel creature that he rides every day. But, you know what I did like too? How he has, presumably, a little... I don't know if it's an R2, an R4, but whatever, he has a little... droid buddy that guards his cave.
Oh my god, I love that.
Yeah, and lets them know if there's someone in there or not. When it's just
has a nice setup, like
for a cave.
For a cave setup.
Yeah, on a
old man Kenobi in his cave back there.
Yeah, on a desert planet. He has a much nicer setup in Episode 4, though. He clearly did some renovations in between.
What makes me laugh too is like he's living in this like weird thing, and he's like the only person that's like heading out of town at the end of the day, and I'm like, and nobody thinks it's weird that random dude is just hiding out in the corner. Like, no one's paid enough attention to him to be like, that guy's suspicious, that guy's a Jedi.
Well, one of the things about Tatooine, I know that's been established in the comics, is that it's a planet that's so backward and like Tatooine, I'm trying to equate what it could be in America. I don't want to say that it's the Florida of the galaxy, but it's like no one involves in anybody's business in Tatooine.
Everybody's a Tatooine man.
Well, in one of the Vader comics, Vader goes back to Tatooine because he's looking for information about Kenobi, and Jabba the Hutt has this line, because he runs into Jabba the Hutt, of course, but Jabba the Hutt says to him, "Who'd have thought that anyone important would have ever been from this planet?" And it's kind of like a little slide to, Vader being Anakin Skywalker from Tatooine. Not that Jabba knows, because Jabba doesn't know. Maybe he knows, I don't know. But he says to Vader, like, who'd have thought anyone of importance would be from Tatooine? So he's got his little 9 to 5 that he's got going on or whatever. And then he's just he gets a message from Bail Organa that Leia's been captured because she gets kidnapped. Oh, well, I guess I should mention he knows that there are Inquisitors looking for him because they show up on Tatooine.
Prior to this.
Yeah.
And Leia's kidnapped. It's all set up because of course it is. Mm-hmm. Like, why wouldn't it be? There's
some Jedi that knows who Obi-Wan is that's like, you have to help me escape. Like, the Inquisitors are looking for me, and Obi-Wan's like, I don't know who you are, just hide. Like, I'm not Obi-Wan, I don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, Obi-Wan's basically like, the Jedi are dead, don't bother me.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that stuff anymore.
Yeah, his sole mission is, quote-unquote, looking after Luke, but really, he's so devastated over what happened to the Jedi and himself.
Well, also,
he's using Luke as an excuse.
One of the things you overhear, like, from Yoda in the beginning of that, like, beginning sequence is Yoda being like, oh, you have to commune, like, I'll teach you how to commune, find Qui-Gon. So, like, we know Qui-Gon's probably going to pop up at some point.
Yeah.
Almost 100% certain that
And it is interesting because presumably, like, it seems that Obi-Wan's shut himself off from the Force, but at the same time is trying to commune with Qui-Gon. Like, because when he's rescuing Leia in one scene and she falls off a building,
he's like concerned he can't
catch her.
Yeah.
Like, he's like struggling to even use the Force to try and... Spoilers, he catches her. She doesn't die. But even... I guess we'll get to the big point. His confrontation with Vader. Clearly, he's not using the Force in his fight with... Like, Vader just dominates him. Which, I guess he would be able to, even if Obi-Wan had the Force. But it's just this old, scared man who cut himself off from the Force, and he's facing the most deadly Jedi of all time. / Sith of all time.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah.
And like I said, I think we'll definitely get Qui-Gon
Mm-hmm.
at some point.
Yeah. He's going to show up.
I mean, at this point, you said earlier, not a lot happens in these 3 episodes. That's like, it's a lot of setup, and I assume the back half is gonna be the big, and this person shows up. It's gonna be like watching The Mandalorian when you're like, oh, and Ahsoka's here, and like, oh, and Luke's here. Like, you're suddenly just gonna have a bunch of people showing up.
That could very well. I think Ahsoka. There might be. I'm gonna be 50-50 that Ahsoka shows up in this. If not, if we get a season 2 of Obi-Wan Kenobi, Ahsoka's definitely gonna show up in it. But we'll have to see. We're gonna get Qui-Gon. I think maybe we'll get a Yoda cameo. Who knows?
Maybe. I honestly think Ahsoka would be more likely before Yoda, personally. But then again, is Ahsoka going to show up in this, or is Obi-Wan going to show up in Ahsoka? Because I think it's going to be one or the other. And I don't think...
Well, Ahsoka takes place after Jedi.
Okay.
So
I wasn't sure when Ahsoka takes place. So.
Yeah, Ahsoka's going to take place after... Ahsoka's going to be her hunting down Thrawn. Like, she's...
I know that.
Yeah.
So let's say that, like, Ahsoka definitely shows up here, because I think...
Well, as far as cameos and everything...
Well, does that work either? Because...
Rosario Dawson could still...
No, I'm more so thinking in terms of, like...
The character's age.
The knowledge of Vader and who knows what when.
Mm-hmm. Oh, because she finds out who Vader is in Rebels.
Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to, like, coordinate in my head how that, like, plays out properly.
I don't know. Well, because I know people were upset. I guess this has to take place before... It definitely takes place before Rebels, because I think Leia's an adult in Rebels. And I know people were upset that the Grand Inquisitor gets killed in Episode 2, because he's still alive in Rebels. So maybe he didn't actually get killed. Maybe that's going to come back to bite Third Sister in the ass at some point.
Maybe. Or maybe this does take place after... I don't know. It's a very complicated timeline.
Yeah.
That's some research we need to do in between this and the back half of this season, because...
Yeah, we'll take a look and see when Rebels takes place and everything.
Take a look at the timeline.
Oh, you're right, because there's a time jump in Rebels.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, I don't know if...
Yeah,
we'll have to look into it.
Yeah. When
we're done recording and, like...
Yeah, figure that out. But, yeah.
I think Ahsoka is a big one. Qui-Gon, I think, is a big one.
Mm-hmm. I also feel like there were certain characters in this, like Camille Nanjiani. I can't remember. I can never remember how his name is said. But he plays a fake Jedi in this. And I feel like that was sort of a... Hey, would you like to see a Disney Plus series about this guy?
Maybe.
Or maybe he'll show up in a later movie or something.
You know what else they mentioned? Who they mentioned too? They mentioned Quinlan in in the 3rd episode too, when we're talking about the path and you know, getting Jedi to safety basically. So like, again, we kind of know that there's a lot of names going on. Yeah,
I also I think another criticism of the show is some of the editing, like just the way that. I know people had a problem with when Third Sister was parkouring through that one city chasing after Kenobi, and then she didn't even catch him. Like, it was like kind of silly editing to have her doing that. And then also the Obi-Wan and Vader confrontation, how that was edited, because
that was a little
off. I think that comes down to shooting the show on I forgot what they call it, but what they shoot The Mandalorian on, that big giant stage and everything. Like, they have limited space. It's not like when they shot the movies.
I also think the issue, too, is that they're trying to portray Obi-Wan as, like, weak right now, and then you have these very clearly strong characters chasing him. Like, realistically, they would have caught him in, like, 5 seconds, but, like, you can't have that happen.
Yeah. Yeah, especially since he cut himself off from the Force, so he's just, like, a regular guy.
I think that's the problem. It's very complicated, like, illogical, but...
Yeah. He does still have all of his knowledge from years of war and everything like that, so I don't know. I do actually enjoy him being cutting himself off from the Force right now, because it's something, when Episode 8 came out, I got into an argument with a friend who was very upset with the portrayal of Luke Skywalker in that, like how he'd be a recluse and cut himself off and everything, and I said, but that's what the Jedi always do. And they were like, what are you talking about? I'm like, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda did the same exact things. They went into they failed at what they wanted to do, and they went into hiding and cut themselves off. And he was like, no, they didn't. I'm like, yes, they did. That's exactly what they did.
What was Yoda doing on Dagobah other than that?
Yeah, he was just hanging out. He was like, oh, well, maybe someday someone will show up that I have to train.
Maybe something will happen at some point. I don't know, but I'm just going to be here.
Yeah. So, I don't know, anything else you'd like to discuss about the series? Any theories you want to say about where we think this is going to go? Or
it wouldn't surprise me if there's a second season, I will say that now. I do think... I wish they had saved the Leia plotline for the second season and kind of kept with just Obi-Wan for this first season, so we were focused more so on Obi-Wan. I hope we get some of the Rebels characters. I hope we get... like Sabine and stuff. Like, I think there's a couple of things I'd like to see.
I think
maybe some more of the Mandalorians, like Mandalore.
Yeah, from Mandalore. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, we talked about that off recording, and we also talked about why would they cast Hayden Christensen without planning to do flashbacks. Like, we
already discussed that they're probably going to need to do one to figure out what's going on with Reva, because unless she's just going to like explain and talk at Obi-Wan about why she's decided to hunt him down, it's going to be a flashback.
Yeah. We also mentioned, I'm 99.9% sure Qui-Gon's going to show up at some point. There's no, like, Obi-Wan's trying to talk to him. There's no way, at least his voice is going to...
The voice is definitely going to be there.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that the bigger surprise would be his Force Ghost being there, but like...
Yeah, you just slap a brown wig and beard on Liam Neeson, he pretty much looks exactly the same as he did in 99. Like, and make him blue so he's a ghost. Like, you get away with it. We also mentioned we think possibly the Emperor will show up at some point. We'll have to see what happens. Maybe that's something that we're wrong about, and it'll be
it'd be interesting. I think that would be the big, like, shock.
Yeah.
See, what's interesting to me is, so... I watched this with my boyfriend, and he's like, oh, you're going to be shocked about something. And, like, he thought James Earl Jones coming back to do the voice was going to be, like, some big shock to me. And I'm like, I mean, it's surprising, but, like, that's not, like, a big shock. Like, oh, my God, that happens. Like, well, of course they went and got him. Like, that's how it feels to me. Like, of course.
I was just happy that he sounded so good. Because when he was in Rogue One, I was like, oh, he doesn't sound like Vader anymore.
No, and whatever sort of auto-tuning they did was excellent.
Well, because I've played a million Star Wars video games that had other voice actors doing Vader who sounded like Vader, and I was like, use them. like, use someone who sounds... But whatever they did a great job making him sound like Vader again.
I love that. I'm trying to think.
Maybe we'll get a helmet-off Vader scene, and we'll hear Hayden Christensen's voice.
That would be interesting, too.
Yeah. Maybe, That
would be the other reason to cast Hayden Christensen if we were going to do it that way.
Maybe when Obi-Wan gets his Force powers back, he'll throw a bunch of sand at Vader.
Because
he knows he hates it, because it's coarse and rough. It'll end up in his breathing apparatus. It'll be his one weakness. I'll tell you what, the only thing, 19 years with them not seeing each other is fine for Vader to say our long-awaited reunion, but... that line from episode 4 of him saying our long-awaited reunion. I don't think 9 years is that long. Like,
again, I think that's what throws me off too, is like, now, like, my thought process was always, he never met Vader in those 19 years.
Yeah.
Like, so while I appreciate he's in this, at the same time, I'm like, doesn't that kind of ruin that? Like, wouldn't it have made more sense for all the Inquisitors to be chasing him down and stuff, and Vader just kind of be like an empty threat on the horizon.
Well, we talked about off recording how he didn't know that Vader was still alive. Like, he was shocked to find out Vader was still alive, and it's kind of like, well, what was Vader doing for the past 10 years? Was he not out there slaughtering people and stuff that Obi-Wan wouldn't have known?
I said the mistake here is that, and I had forgotten that everybody knows that Anakin is Lord Vader, like, at the end of episode 3, like, that he has been dubbed Lord Vader, like, this is, like, a known fact.
Yeah.
And I'm like, the problem with that is, like, now everybody knows that. So, like, all the important characters that are like, oh, I had no clue that Vader was, like Ahsoka. I understand why she wouldn't know, which is almost why I'm like, can we really have her pop up in the series? Because then is Obi-Wan not going to mention that, like, oh yeah, Vader and Anakin are the same person? Like,
you know, it's
timeline-wise? Like, this is what I'm saying. Like, this is going to do a lot of weird things for the timeline if, like, depending on what's going on.
You just made me think of something completely unrelated to what we're discussing, but we just recorded our episode 3 podcast, Revenge of the Sith, and I forgot to mention this in the podcast because I didn't put it in my notes, and if I don't put it in my notes, I don't remember it. There was a line that George Lucas removed from that when Palpatine is revealing to Anakin that he's the Dark Lord of the Sith. He also has a line, this was in the first draft of the script, and George Lucas took it out, where he says, the exact phrase is, he explains how Darth Plagueis could create life and everything, and he says to him, I arrange, how does he say it? He says something along the lines of, I arranged for your conception to happen, so from a certain point of view, I am your father. And Anakin says to him, that's not true, that's impossible. And Palpatine says, search your feelings, you know it to be true. And Anakin screams, no. And I forgot to mention that, and I wanted to put that just because you made me think of it somehow. But I was like, you know, good thing George did a second draft, at least, of that script and took that part out. You know, it's like poetry, it rhymes. But
like I said, there's a lot of weird... I think it'll be interesting to see how the series interacts with the rest of the timeline, because I think it's definitely going to be pulling at some weird points.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to see Alderaan before that gets turned into space dust.
It is nice.
Yeah.
We get to see Alderaan and, like, enjoy it.
Sorry. And some of Leia's little conflicts with her little cousin that she has, who is also a Star Wars character.
And she's very nice to droids already.
Yes, Lola.
Yeah. And the other droids.
Yes.
It's all the droids.
Yeah, the little silent droid. I forget his name, too. Mm-hmm. But he also has a name because it's Star Wars, so everyone has a name.
Can't make merch if they don't have names, Jason.
No, you're right. Oh, you know what I did love in episode 1? The little Jawa that's Obi-Wan's friend.
Oh my god.
That steals Obi-Wan's stuff and then sells it back to him.
Like, if you're gonna steal it from me, at least clean it before you sell it back to me.
And he says cleaning costs extra. That was fantastic. That was
the
very
Jawa
funny.
Attitude.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I'm looking forward to see where the rest of this goes. And like I said, this episode of our podcast is... I'm going to release Revenge of the Sith, our episode
first
on that, and then this. So this will come out after episode 4 has already aired. Yeah, because episode 4 comes out
definitely think
tomorrow.
we'll be getting more interesting, like going more interesting places.
Yeah. And even episode 5 of this series will air before this episode comes out, so maybe we'll be super wrong about things by the time this comes out. There'll only be the 6th episode left to get our theories and predictions out there about it. Let's see if there's anything else I want to discuss. Yeah, it's interesting, the turmoil between the Inquisitors.
Yeah, they're all kind of jockeying per position.
Yeah, it kind of shows off what they... Because they're scumbags. Like, that's just, like, they were Jedi. They were weak Jedi.
Well, the thing is, you know, it's implied that they're all trying to be Vader's apprentice, like, only apprentice, because the rule of 2. Well, and here we are, once again, proving that the rule of 2 is a bit of shit, because we have multiple Sith people existing in this space.
Well, they're not apprentices. They're Inquisitors.
They're Inquisitors, but they're still, like...
Sith. Yeah.
Sith.
Yeah. But they're all cockroaches. Like, they were all Jedi who, when Order 66 happened, went to the dark side to stay alive. Also, that, I forget his name now, but that weird alien that betrayed Obi-Wan and Leia when they were on his little boat ship.
Yeah.
He was kind of funny. I'd like to see him pop up again.
Yeah, he was interesting.
Yeah.
And at first I wasn't sure. I'm like, is he a good guy? He a bad guy? Who is he? What's going on?
I think Obi-Wan should go back to that planet and cut one of his arms off. That's Obi-Wan's move.
Yes, do it.
Someone's got to lose an arm at some point in this series.
That'd be interesting if Mace Windu showed up as a Force ghost.
Yeah, did I say, like, one of the things that would have been cool is if they did, like, Mace Windu is alive and Obi-Wan goes looking for him or something. Like, one of the things that would, like, I don't know. It's nice seeing Leia, and I enjoy the actress, but they could have done a million different things. The other thing, too, about this is that...
They could have gave us some interesting hope. Like you said, if they were like, Mace Windu is alive, we would have been like, what if Mace Windu actually is still alive?
Yeah.
Like, it would have been like oh my god, what if we're really going to see Mace Windu? Instead we have, and that is going to come up, and I apologize
That's all right,
already.
yeah.
And, like, instead we have Leia, and it's like, we already know she's gonna turn out to be safe. Like, again, we know the outcome.
Yeah, there's no real drama of it. Like, he's gonna succeed in his mission. It's so interesting, too, because this was floating around as a movie idea for years. So the fact that not much happens in each episode, I think they kind of just took the movie script and stretched it out. Like, instead of a 2-hour version of this, we gotta make it, a 6-hour version.
A 6-hour version where nothing happens.
Yeah. But, we're hopeful for the future, and we'll see where it goes. And without anything else, that concludes this week's episode of the Once Again podcast. Thank you for joining us. Any questions, comments, or critiques can be addressed to our email at onceagainpod@gmail.com. Follow us at onceagainpod, all one word, on Twitter and Instagram. If you are feeling generous and would like to contribute to the podcast, we have several tiers available on patreon.com/onceagainpod. Also, a like and a share would be greatly appreciated. Thank you and have a wonderful day. And remember, we will entertain you. We will always entertain you. Rumpelstiltskin always says that magic comes with a price. But for this price, you can get a nice piece of jewelry. Use code ONCEPOD for 10% off your first order at Unusual Magic Jewelry on Etsy. Click the link in the description.